I'm running away from my crazy conservative family. They're trying to sell me away to some man. I am the youngest, 22, of 5 kids. My parents are those crazy Christian families from Utah. Growing up, everything had to be done perfectly. It didn't matter if it was grades, looks, social activities, or even friends. I'm different from my siblings as I was never interested in the maths and science like they were. I've always been the writer, the painter. I remember once when I was 13, I made a painting of a dove in a snowy field and won first in the competition. I told my parents, who got angry that I had wasted my time with something so worthless when I should have been using the time to study. I still had A's in every class. My mother won't even say more than a few words to me. She's always seems like she hates me and I don't understand. Father burned the painting to remind me of what was truly important before taking all of my art supplies until I showed more responsibility with my time. It's been like this as long as I can remember. I work full-time, and have since I was 15 at McDonald's and door dashing every bit of money I could. Father took half my checks as tithing to help teach me what being an adult was like. I applied to several colleges but was told by my parents that they would not be helping me with tuition as they did for my siblings because they thought sending me to college would just be a waste of money. So I got angry. I am so tired of being the black sheep just because I like arts more than maths and science. And then, I heard them talking when I got up in the middle of the night about the perfect man they'd found who was willing to take me in. They said that he'd finally be able to make me into a woman. Men in our church are known for being extremely sexist and demanding. I don't want to live the rest of my life a slave to some man. I am terrified, and so I'm leaving. I've got some money saved up, a good amount, and I'm leaving the country. I found a job that lets me work remote doing freelance design work, and I've had my passport since I was a kid because of our family vacations overseas. I'm taking nothing other than a change of clothes, my laptop, and important documents I took out of my father's office. I booked a flight that leaves in 5 hours and I'm never coming back. I'm not even going to take my phone since I'd need to get a new number anyway. My best friend, God bless her, had been the one booking things and getting everything ready since I couldn't tip off my parents. She's also smuggled some of my more important things I can't take to hold onto for me. She's parking down the street and I'll leave with my smallest suitcase for her. I don't know how they'll take this. I'm terrified they'll find a way to drag me back, or track me down. They went to bed over an hour ago, but I'm too anxious to sleep. I was able to run away without them stopping me. They've tracked down my email and have been harassing me nonstop on there. I tried to ignore it, but I still loved them. So, I finally opened the emails, deciding it was best to probably get it over with. My father's email was filled with anger, there is no other way to put it. He said that by taking off irresponsibly like I did cost them the friendship of someone they'd planned on introducing to me. He never admitted that it was the 53-year-old they'd basically sold me to. Father stated that because of the social relations that had been damaged and impacted by my actions, I owe them approximately $85,000 in reparations. He also claims that he will be taking me to court if I don't pay it in full within 30 days and return home, as I obviously cannot be trusted. I plan to ignore that as I believe him to be bluffing. He ended his email/rant with "You belong to me, and I won't tolerate such defiance when we've put a roof over your head and taken care of you for your entire life. You were never the child we expected, it's time you make up for your deficiencies. I expect you home within the next 2 weeks. Yeah. No. My siblings were basically copies of my father's email, admonishing me for throwing the efforts of our parents in their faces before running off like a coward unwilling to face the fallout of my actions. I skimmed them honestly, before just deleting them. It's nothing I didn't expect. However, my sister-in-law, she's married to my eldest brother, sent her own email before asking me not to reply as she would be deleting every sign she sent it from her end. She congratulated me on stepping out on my own and getting away from my parents and their demands. She said that she herself hadn't been strong-willed enough to stand up to her parents when they basically betrothed her to my brother. Which makes sense as I remember that they met and then married within 6 months, and even then I thought that was a bit strange. She pleaded with me not to return, and not to reply. That was it. It was a bit unnerving honestly, as I do believe her, and I'm sad that she is stuck the way she is. The last email was from my best friend. She said that the morning after I flew out, my parents had been on their doorstep demanding to see me. Apparently they believed I was hiding with her. They refused to leave, screaming for me to stop pretending I wasn't there. It caused enough of a scene that the police were called, but they only talked to my parents briefly and let them leave. It really angered my friend, who'd wanted them arrested for threats and trespassing. The police only claimed that there wasn't a pattern of behavior that would warrant them being arrested and charged. Before just leaving. She didn't know when they realized I wasn't there at her house, but they didn't come back thankfully. However, word has spread of me fleeing the safety of my parents' home and how they wanted me to return as they were concerned and fearful of what may happen with me out on the streets alone. The church ward has actually done searches of the area trying to find me. I don't know what they'll do from here, but they have no idea I left the country, let alone the state. My friend has no plans to say anything, and neither do I. As far as I'm concerned right now, they can live with that state of wondering for the rest of eternity. I plan on ignoring any further emails from my family, other than printing them out just in case. They've made several phone calls to my friend who's had fun with them. The first time your father called yelling that I hand you over, I pretended to be cowed and gave him your location. It took him to a naked club. He came back screaming at how I had embarrassed him. I just hung up on him honestly. She did that each time they called, giving a different location each time. Her favorite was sending my parents to a nudist retreat. My mother passed out apparently. It's what they deserve for setting me up to some old cow.
My for the streets girlfriend has spreadsheet of the guys she cheated on me with. I had to wait ages for just a kiss while she slept with multiple guys. We met 3 years ago at a party of a mutual friend. Once we were introduced, we ended up spending the entire rest of the party just sitting and talking to one another. It really felt like we were the only two people there, and as the night ended she told me that she really enjoyed talking to me and asked me for my number. Which was a first for me. I awoke the next morning to a text from her telling me how much she enjoyed talking with me and wanted to know if I would be interested in getting together to talk some more. I agreed, and that next weekend we met at a local bookstore/coffee house where we proceeded to spend 5 hours talking until the shop kicked us out because they were closing. Not once in either of the conversations did we talk about anything romantic or love or anything like that. It was everything from philosophy to economics to religion and everything in between. Once again she tells me she has had a great time and asks if we can do this again. We set a time for the next weekend and same exact thing happens again. This goes on for 3 more times and I am very confused as to what this is. Are we just friends getting together to talk? Is this going anywhere else? I had no idea. She sends me a text the week prior to meeting telling me that I am the easiest person she has ever talked to and that she feels totally comfortable and safe being with me. So finally at the end of the next day when she says she wants to do this again, I just said that I was curious as to what she considered these times together as. I asked if we are just friends or was there a possibility of being more? She said that she really enjoyed our time together and would like to see where it goes. Next time we are together, as we are talking, I kind of reached out and took her hand and we held hands for the first time for several minutes. I tell her at the end of this night that next time I would like to do something different with her and took her to the movies. Things went well and during the movie I put my arm around her and she laid her head on my shoulder. As we parted that night I gathered up my courage and leaned in to give her a kiss goodnight. Her response was not what I expected. She actually withdrew from my attempt and I immediately apologized to her and felt like a total heel. She said that I didn't need to apologize, but she was just a little shocked as she wasn't expecting it. I quickly apologized again and withdrew for the night, embarrassed beyond belief. She texted me the very next day saying she was sorry about the night before. She really liked me and wants to move that direction in our relationship, but she wanted to take things slow. I replied saying that I was willing to go at whatever speed she wanted and again apologized because I felt really bad. Now mind you, while I said I was willing to go at her speed, and I was, but I was really confused by what taking it slow meant. We had been seeing each other once a week for hours at a time for over 2 months. But being very inexperienced in the relationship game, only had a girlfriend in high school and went out on dates in college but mostly as friends and nothing ever lasted, I just thought I would let her take the lead. We went out 2 more times and then at the beginning of our next date she actually greeted me with a kiss. From there our relationship advanced at what I consider a normal pace. A year and a half later we were living together and in my opinion, everything was going great. That is until 2 weeks ago she had to pick me up at my work because my car was in the shop. She pulled up and was sitting in the car and one of my coworkers who I'm friendly with came out with me as he was leaving at the same time. I introduced them from a distance but clearly within view of each other. They waved hello and we left. The next day I came back and he said he wanted to make sure there wasn't going to be a problem between the two of us. I asked him why would there be and he said she didn't say anything to you. I said she did not and he said well it was a couple of years ago so she may not even remember him, and then he proceeds to tell me that they matched up on Tinder and would hook up with each other and it went on for a few months before B started dating his current girlfriend. I told him that it might have been a different person and he then proceeds to show me her Tinder profile. I've never used the site before so I wasn't sure how to look at anything, but he said it does not look like she is active on there now and hasn't been for a while. But the fact of the matter was that for sure it was her, and to make matters worse, I didn't tell him this, but the time frame that he was saying was also some of the same time we were together in the beginning. The times I was rebuked for leaning in for a kiss and quit possibly even after this. He could tell this was bothering me and he apologized but said that I needed to know that they were never dating or anything, it was just getting together to have intimacy, as though I was supposed to be okay with that. He didn't want to say much else, but he said that I should know that he knows for a fact that he wasn't the only one. Needless to say, this all upset me greatly, but I didn't know what to do or how to handle this. It was eating away at me and I did something I probably shouldn't have done, but we share an Outlook calendar and have for over a year so that we can plan our events. While she was gone I looked at her laptop and found her Outlook, which was nothing more than what we shared. However, I noticed she had a separate calendar and it was not password protected. I went back on her calendar, even though I knew it was wrong, and sure as crap there was his first name, and yes, for fact some of those dates were after we were already past the getting to know you stage. But wait, there's more. Not only was his name there, but there were several other guys' names. There were weeks where she had a different name on every day of the week and twice had 2 names on weekend days. What made me the sickest of all though was looking at the weeks where we were early on in our relationship when I had to basically be afraid to hold her hand, that she was meeting with other guys that week and even one time earlier in the day when we met. How do I know this, you might ask? My name was on there as well. Now it does appear that about 5 months after we started dating the names mostly stopped, and by a year and there were no more names. But what really sucks is that one guy's name is on there more than others, and this is a guy who she has brought to our house on more than one occasion and introduced us. She has never once told me that they were ever intimate partners. In fact, that is what kind of pisses me off about all of this. Frankly, if I didn't know any of this I would tell you she was a prude. Intimacy is very vanilla and I always have to initiate it. However, she just told me not more than a month ago that she feels like I'm her soulmate and she loves me with all of her heart. This is causing me a lot of pain, to be honest. I don't think I can live with this. The fact that I had to wait for months to even kiss and hold hands while all along she was getting intimacy from a variety of people makes me feel like absolute crap. The fact that I honestly was beating myself up after trying for a kiss really pisses me off. Then there is a part of me that says I'm not good enough. Sure, she may enjoy my personality or whatever, but obviously I am not attractive enough for her to want to be with me early on. Really bothers me. I mean, it would be one thing if she did all of this before we met, but there are names marked clearly after we were involved just before we moved in together. Including the guy I work with. I have yet to confront her. I don't know what I'm going to do or say. There is a very large part of me that just wants out of this. I feel like she is not the person she portrayed herself to be. Oh, believe me, she is a very judgmental person and has tons of opinions and comes across as holier than thou even though she is not religious per se. Has anyone else ever had to deal with this? After thinking about this a lot, I decided that if everything was true, I didn't believe I could live with it. From my point of view, not only did it change the entire basically first year of our relationship, it fundamentally changed who I thought she was. I mean, we can all have different ways we react around people, but there are some things you can't just be one way one day and one way another day. However, just because the names were there, it doesn't necessarily mean she was sleeping with or even dating those guys. My wife is demanding we change our child's last name to her ex-husband's, so I filed for divorce and she refuses to accept it. My wife has recently kicked me out of the house just 3 weeks after the birth of our first child. The reason I was kicked out stemmed from an ex. So, my wife was previously in a long-term relationship with her ex, who committed suicide due to PTSD after he returned from Afghanistan. Her son from her first relationship lives with us and is 12 years old. Her son has her ex's surname. The main problem is that she is demanding that our baby takes on her ex's surname. Her reasoning is that her 12-year-old has her ex's name and so does she, and if we give the baby my surname, the 12-year-old will feel alienated. She has been demanding this. Literally demanding. She refuses to take anything except an enthusiastic yes for an answer, and if I try to protest it, I usually get crocodile tears as well as her talking about her ex and how much he meant to her. She says that I'm a bad person for not allowing our son to have his surname. I have tried my best to compromise, saying that since I practically raised her son, he can have my surname, that way he won't feel left out, and she can take my name too. She said no, as her 12-year-old son has had his name all his life and shouldn't have to change it to appease me. I also tried to explain that they have 2 separate fathers, so it's natural that they have different names. That was turned down with tears too. We have to register the baby's name next Thursday. I told her that we should probably get couples therapy and in the meantime register the baby with my name. She turned that down too and said she went through the trouble of carrying the baby and pushing it out, and she should get to decide this on her own. I even asked her son and he said he doesn't mind having separate names as he knows his father was his father, but I am dad. He doesn't care if his newborn baby sister has a different surname. I told my wife this and she said I am emotionally manipulating her son. We had another argument 5 days ago and haven't spoken much since. I didn't want it to continue like this, as this should be our happy moments. 2 days ago I told her that the baby either gets my surname or we are getting a divorce. I told her that perhaps her dead husband could help raise our daughter with her since she doesn't want to acknowledge me as the dad. She called me a manipulator and says it's not fair that she doesn't get to decide the baby's first name on her own or the surname. Her suggestions for the first name when she was pregnant were feminine versions of her ex's name. That day I called a solicitor and she overheard. She is telling me that I am forcing her into a corner and being manipulative. I decided to come home and have a family get together and discuss this problem. I invited her, mine and her ex's parents to the discussion and they all showed up. Her sister tagged along for this discussion. Turns out my parents are the only ones that agreed with me on my surname. Her parents and sister agreed with her, saying I should do it as she was the one that carried her. Surprisingly, her ex's parents thought it would be a nice gesture to name my daughter with their surname. Also, to my shock, they revealed that the first name I agreed to for our child was the name her ex wanted to name their child if they had had a girl instead. She blushed when that piece of information got out. I asked her if it would be fair to name our daughter after one of my exes, and she said that wasn't the same. The rest of the discussion went play and unlike I expected, it did not get heated. When everyone left, I tried to reason with her again, but she went upstairs, slammed the bedroom door in my face and locked it. In the morning she didn't come out. I left her breakfast by the door hoping she would calm down enough by the time we would register to discuss it as adults. A few of her friends phoned me and asked me why it was so important for me in the year of 2023 to give my surname to my child. I explained my side and why I had reservations. They still felt I was being unreasonable. On the Tuesday before the name appointment, Thursday, my wife picked a fight with me and said she was going to name our daughters both first and last names after her ex. She went as far as saying that she would rather take her life than give her daughter my name. So, I am a little ashamed about this, but I called the police on her saying she threatened to commit suicide. They came and took her away, despite her protesting and saying she was okay, stating it was only said in the heat of the moment. I guess I egged on the police, telling them it could be postpartum depression and that I felt it was not safe for her to be around our baby. I registered the name on my own without her blessing and participation. She was still not released by then. Our daughter's first, middle and surname are all chosen by me. My wife obviously has some unresolved issues and I hope she gets the help she needs. There is something wrong with her, as she instructed her ex's parents to collect her son and my daughter to look after via her sister until she could get out. When her ex's parents came by and tried to take the baby, I told them to F off. They threatened me with police and I told them to go ahead. So they left with their grandson. Her parents came by during the weekend and wanted to take the baby to my wife, and when I resisted they kept telling me not to be difficult. I told them no over and over and they finally left. A health inspector even came by our house. When my wife was released she didn't come home and went to her parents' house instead. She has been there since, although she tried twice to take the baby from me. I changed the locks. She did drop off expressed milk for the baby, and has continued to do so via her sister. I contacted a solicitor for the divorce, and for now I am keeping the baby, as even the health visitor said that social services are going to get involved due to her mental state, and I am the better option for care for now. There is no saving my marriage, and I doubt she ever loved me, with other things that have come out since then. Siblings of narcissists, psychopaths or sociopaths, what's your experience? My brother was diagnosed with NPD at 16. He's never had empathy. Children learn empathy at some point, but it was like he never reached the developmental stage. He was unconcerned when people got hurt. He hurt and bullied others in school to get what he wanted. Doctors, therapists, medication. Nothing made a difference, and it's not like there was some kind of trauma or a reason for his behavior. It's like he was just born wrong. When he was 10, he started taking and dealing substances. As a runner for some older teens, you can't be prosecuted under 14 in Germany. My parents called our version of CPS for help. He got more therapy, some inpatient stays, and his own social worker. He stole my dad's car when he was 12 and got picked up by the cops. He got his first charges at 14, substances and assault. My parents were at their wits' end and agreed to have him placed in a group home for troubled teens for a year. He was kicked out shortly before the year was up. He came home and seemed to recognize in a clinical, detached kind of way, that he couldn't go on like this without ending up in prison. He was about 15. He started being less violent, but he had insane delusions of grandeur and needed everyone to comply with whatever he wanted. If they didn't, he lashed out. My parents still made him go to therapy. He assaulted my dad because he didn't want to. My brother was 16, but also 6'3" and about 95 kilos. My dad died from a sudden aneurysm when he was 16, and he went off the rails completely. He got a girl pregnant and she was kicked out by her mom. My mom took her in. The girl was not a bad person, just had some issues, so it wasn't that surprising that she'd date my brother, who could be charming if his situation demanded it. He beat her up at our house a couple months later while she was still pregnant. That was the last straw for my mom. She kicked my brother out. We helped the girl to find an apartment for her and the baby. Unsurprisingly, my mom caved a short while later and let my brother move back in. He seemed to think he was the head of the household. My parents never married, so my father's modest possessions went to me and my brother instead of my mom, and that included the car my dad bought a year before he died. It was the first brand new car he ever bought, a small one, but he was proud of it. My brother made my mom sell it so he could get his half of the money. It wasn't even an expensive one, and my mom was devastated to lose my deceased dad's little car. I was 20 then, my brother was 17. He was verbal and mistreated my mom mentally. He threatened to hurt me on a daily basis whenever I didn't do something or give him something he wanted. He also threatened to end me a couple of times. On a particular bad day he told my mom that he'd have no trouble to get a couple guys to run her off the road when she went out. When the threats got stale, he'd hurt me up every couple weeks. There was one particular instance where I was actually afraid he was going to end me. He did his usual spiel of using me as a verbal punching bag because he had a bad day, and I was just burnt out. Didn't even react anymore. No idea how, but I fought him off, grabbed my phone and ran to the bathroom where I locked myself in before he could get to me again. He was trying to kick down the door while I called the cops. The cops did nothing, told me he lived there, so we'd have to get along, and since we both said opposing things, nothing would come of it. I insisted they take my statement. My mom wasn't home at the time, but she was a wreck anyway and couldn't deal anymore. A couple days later, my aunt came to visit for a couple of days. My brother was his charming, manipulative self for her. My aunt tried to pressure me into not pressing charges, since apparently I gave myself the dozens of bruises and contusions I had, as my brother had told her. I was severely sad at that point and gave my mom an ultimatum, me or him. She kicked him out again. He came back a year later, and I moved out for college immediately. I don't blame my mom much anymore, drugs and a hard place and all that, but she never could understand the fact that her love for her son was misplaced. He didn't have the things that made someone human. He had no empathy, he was not capable of love, he was just an empty shell that went through life trying to get whatever pleasures he so desired by whatever means necessary. I haven't spoken to or seen him in about 7 years, but my mom's still in contact with him. He went to Spain when the mother of his daughter tried to get child support. Sometimes, my mom still talks about the things he's done. A couple examples. For some reason, his ex-girlfriend started letting him see his daughter, and she flies to Spain with my mom once or twice a year. Or used to. Anyway, he locked her in the basement with an adult-sized portion of food she threw up on because she couldn't eat anymore. She was 4 or so. She doesn't want to go visit him anymore. He withheld rent from his Spanish landlord for like 6 months. The landlord had an illness and my brother saw it as a waste to give money to a passing man. He married a girl in Spain and had another kid, and he now makes a living as a realtor. From what I've heard, he still thinks he's God's gift to mankind. I don't think I'd even go to his funeral if he passed. Of psychopaths/sociopaths, how did you realize your friend wasn't normal? When I, age 21, 1989, walked into the hallway in our shared house and saw him playing the electric piano. He had a photo of the girl he'd been dating in front of him and was, badly, playing mournful sounding music. Bad breakup? I said, and he explained to me in careful detail how she had accused him of being a feelingless monster because he was unmoved by some minor tragedy. I've forgotten precisely what. He proceeded to tell me she was right. He didn't care and couldn't make himself. He didn't take joy in the other person's suffering. He just wasn't moved. So the piano and photo were an attempt to fit in with the rest of you. See, if I'm doing this, I'm acting like a person with feelings, and people will like me better. I did the 1989 version of Weird Flex but okay, and he evidently decided that meant I was cool with his lack of feelings, and he'd come to me every week or so with some situation coming up in his life and ask me how I thought a person with feelings would react. He eventually got pretty good at this. He called it putting on the human mask. People he met after this generally accepted him as a functioning human. We've been friends ever since. He's very successful as a financial manager of some kind, because emotion doesn't enter into his decisions. He's married, has a couple of cute kids, who he sees as mostly gibbering animals, but sometimes they think. His wife seems happy, but he rescued her from some really toxic situation, so she might figure she's better off, and to the best of my knowledge she has no idea his humanity is a mask. He still talks to me every time her birthday or their anniversary or Christmas comes near, and runs gift suggestions by me. He's totally intelligent enough to see that the stock/cliché gifts are the wrong choice, but doesn't have the perspective to be able to put himself in his wife's shoes and see what she'd want. I'm pretty good at it, judging from the reactions she has to his gifts. Divorced men of Reddit, what moment with your former wife made me think yup, I'm asking this girl to divorce me. 15 years in, and I find texts on her phone. Completely blindsided, no clue she had it in her to cheat, told me it was just texting, begged for forgiveness, I caved. A month later, checked the phone bill to find that it never stopped. Confronted her again. Cue more begging and more denial on my part that she would let the life we had built go down in flames. This went on for a few months. So many promises. One night, I caught her on the phone when she thought I had left. Suddenly it's not just texts. Sometimes it was phone calls too. Just a friend she could talk to that she let things go too far with. Promised to break all contact. Swore it was never physical. Then I found emails. She detailed things that made me sick to read, but also included descriptions of his house. She broke finally, but swore it was all just in the line of duty. That's how she met, you see? Visiting nurse service, and this guy was a client. Promised she was done. Loved me, you see? No chance she was going to let 15 years go like that. I wasn't buying it anymore though. She announced she was going out one night with a work friend. Promised they were only going to the bar, then she'd be home. Maybe late, but not too late. She had taken over her own phone account by then, but wasn't bright enough to understand that Google Latitude was still showing me where she was, and I wasn't about to show my hand. She kissed me goodbye and beelined right for his house, and was there until the wee hours of the morning. Once I knew where she had headed, I called her dad and my best friend to keep me from doing anything dumb. I will love them both forever for keeping me calm while my world went insane all around me. My father-in-law offered to stay with the kids and wait for her to get home. Around 3 a.m., while couch surfing my buddy's place, she sent me a nasty text asking where I thought I was. I texted her a screenshot of her little GPS dot at her boyfriend's and let her know I'd be sending her some paperwork soon.